pray the Lord my soul to take, that we won't lose faith and we won't lose faith. All we got is us, no one can take that away. So don't lose faith, it's gonna be okay. I pray the Lord my soul.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Just Listen to Yourself with Kira Davis. This is the podcast where we take hot topics, hot button issues, and we discuss the talking points on those topics, and we draw those talking points all the way out to their logical conclusion. And I'm laughing because, as you know, I'm on a never-ending journey to master technology as a Gen Xer. And I've decided that in 2025, I'm going to get serious about it. I know I've been talking about it for a while, but kids are graduating. I'm about to be an empty nester, and AI has made everything so easy. So I'm, the reason why I haven't mastered any of it is because I haven't tried hard enough. So today was my first experimenting with some new aspects of this program, and I ended up going live on all my platforms. I managed to wrestle it back after a couple of minutes. That's not what I wanted. I wanted to record in case I have to edit anything. Anyway, so there's bizarre footage of me out there looking weird on my computer as I introduce an episode that I realized, no, I need to start over. Gen X all day, all day long. I don't know. I'm just giggling at myself because the struggle is real. And now I realize that my parents weren't stupid. They were just old. Anyway, welcome to the show. I wanted to talk today about Gavin Newsom. So this isn't we're not thinking through an issue here, but we're going to think about what's going on with Gavin, because last week he launched a podcast. Now, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, has been working hard to recover from some of the recent disasters in California, most specifically the LA fires and the disastrous response to that, and Trump coming in. I mean, it seems like 5 years ago. Guys, it was only 2 months ago. It seems like 5 years ago. So crazy. But he really took a beating, and he's really wanting to campaign for 2028. He's wanting to run in 2028. He wanted to run in 24, and we all know how that all turned out. I think he was supposed to be crowned. And so he's been looking to repair that image and climb back up to the top ever since, because he really has his eye. That's all he's been doing is planning for 2028. And so he's not going to give up that easily, even though I think he really is in a deep hole, even still. And we'll talk about that. So he's been trying a bunch of different things. And we made fun of this podcast that he put up, because he has another podcast that he does with Marshawn Lynch, which is so boring, because he's boring, because he can't tell the truth. That's the thing. I've got a whole episode. I'm working on this. This will be for next week. I'm going to talk about the fakeness of the left and how that plays into why no one is really enjoying their ideas right now. And Meghan Markle launched her show, and it's just so fake, and it's just getting bombed out there in the public square. And one of the reasons why is because it's inauthentic, and people can tell, and they don't like it. So this is a problem Gavin has, is that he can't tell the truth because he can't be authentic. And so his podcast with Marshawn Lynch is terrible, because it's two guys supposedly talking about sports, but he's not authentic enough to hold that. So when he launched this podcast, we all immediately made fun of him. I did too. He's boring. It's going to be boring. But he did something which I think in hindsight is very clever. And he's had a lot of people on his PR team that thought he should fire. Whoever came up with this idea, maybe, that's somebody worth keeping around. When he announced it, he said, the podcast is called This is Gavin. It's an introductory podcast. This is a campaign. And he's introducing himself to America, because right now America doesn't know him. We'll talk about that later. Let me write that down so I can get back to it. And when he launched it, he said, I'm going to launch this, and I'm going to talk to people from all different walks of life, conservatives, liberals, yada, yada, which I thought was hilarious. I thought what conservatives is he going to talk to? He's going to get his ass kicked. And it turns out this entire strategy so far for the show is just to bring conservatives on. First three guests I've seen so far: Charlie Kirk, Michael Savage, and Steve Bannon. And these are highly successful conservative influencers and media personalities, and they come with millions of viewers. So it was a smart move. It's all he's done, and I'll be surprised if he does anything else. Why would he? It looks like he's launching into conservative space. So we have a lot to talk about, because I was immediately put off by Charlie going on there. As a Californian, I thought, oh, great, Charlie, give this guy some air. And we saw the clips from it. It looks like he's moderating. I'll say this, I don't think he's moderating, he's campaigning, which I suppose is in and of itself requires some moderation. So I thought Charlie really did us a disservice lending Gavin that huge platform. That was my initial response. I think a lot of other people in California in my industry felt the same way. We were all very nervous about it, and I think rightfully so. Rightfully so. I reserved judgment, though, until I watched at least the first episode. Gavin is really hard to watch. I'm not that big of a fan of Charlie Kirk's either, just as far as broadcasting wise. I mean, he's a fine person, but I'm not the type of person to sit down and watch Charlie Kirk all day. So it was difficult to turn this on and let it play through. I ended up having to play it through on super speed, which is really interesting to watch Gavin gesture at 2 times the speed. It's crazy. So I did watch it. I have some thoughts on it, and I want to talk about, does this move by Gavin, which is definitely one of the smarter moves he's made, it's definitely getting the most positive attention, if you can call it that, of anything that he's done. Is this something that conservatives and Republicans should feel nervous about? Is it a bad idea for conservative influencers to be giving Gavin so much air? And how does this bode for the future? So, took some notes. Where do I start? Well, I'll start with this. I want to absolve Charlie Kirk from any negativity around this. I watched the whole thing. I think he did the right thing by going on. Now, to be fair, to those of you who were like me initially going, Charlie, you're not helping us. You're giving him your platform, and we need him to, be quiet. And, but when I watched it, I thought, okay, this is good, because Charlie it wasn't like he went on there and thought, okay, this is great. I'm going to, gain something from this. This is going to be great for my platform. He doesn't need Newsom's platform. I did not give Gavin the click for this episode. I gave Charlie the click. Charlie ripped it and put it on his own site with some commentary. So I didn't go to Gavin's site. I only gave Charlie that click. And looking at the podcast, Charlie's site has almost 1 million views on that podcast. On the original podcast, this is Gavin's podcast, on his YouTube page, it's got about 90,000 or 114,000, I think, at last click. Probably pretty good for a governor just starting out with a podcast, but it's nothing, obviously, like Charlie's. Again, smart move on Newsom's part, but a smart move on Charlie's part to put that in his content. Now, what I saw from Charlie was somebody who went in prepared. He didn't go in trying to be flashy. I didn't think he was going in for the click game. I think he genuinely wanted to challenge Newsom. And this is the thing if I could put it this way, if I was nervous for Gavin about, that he was going to be challenged, and he's not used to being challenged. And I thought Charlie might go easy on him, but he wasn't. He was friendly, he was polite, he was respectful, but he went hard on Gavin, and he forced some questions on him. We'll look at some of these clips in a minute. And I thought he asked Gavin questions that he's never been asked, and confronted him on some issues he's rarely been confronted on. We'll get into it. Gavin bobbed and weaved and moderated where he felt he could get away with it, I guess. But I do think it was good on Charlie's part. I thought Charlie was curious. I thought he was appropriately, how do I put this? He was appropriately standoffish. So it wasn't, I'm going to be super friendly, that kind of thing. It was, I know who this guy is, and I'm not going to let his charm. I don't think Gavin has charm, but that's just because I know him too well. I'm not going to let his charm affect this interview. I thought Charlie handled it great. He handled it well, best he could have done. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, how could he have said no to that opportunity, even if it does give Gavin some kind of advantage? So I'm absolving Charlie from that. I think he did the right thing. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get to some of these clips. Let's play some of these clips. And the first clip is, I think you've seen a lot of this viral moment. Gavin has moderated on the trans issue, supposedly. It wasn't, if you dig into it, it wasn't, but you only need the clip. You only need the clip. Another reason why this is smart on Gavin's part, you only need the clip. So let's do this. Let's share our screen here. All right.
Entire discussion. Watch. So like you right now should come out and be like, you know what? The young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports,
right.
that shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out say no.
No, and I appreciate.
But like, would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. It is an issue of fairness. So it's deeply unfair.
Would you speak out against this young man, A.B. Hernandez, who right now is going to win the state championship in the long jump? I can see you wrestling with it.
No, I'm not wrestling. I'm not wrestling with the fairness issue. I totally agree with you. By the way, as someone with 4 kids, I think
and two daughters, right?
2 daughters.
And I have a daughter too.
And a wife that went, God forbid, to Stanford and played on the junior national soccer team, and a guy who got into college only because I was left-handed and could throw a baseball a little bit or hit the ball for a little bit. So I revere sports, and so the issue of fairness is completely legit. And I saw that the last couple of years. Boy, did I saw how you guys were able to weaponize that issue at another level.
Not weaponize. That's
well, weaponize may be pejorative. You're right, but you were able to
shine a light on,
highlight it in a way that, frankly, there are not that many. We're talking about. I think.
All right, I'll stop it there. He said. That clip, that part of the clip did not go viral. That needs to go viral, where he accused Charlie of weaponizing the trans issue. I want you to notice a couple of things on those clips. There was that viral moment. It's an issue of fairness. Now that's the moment that's getting clipped up, and that's the moment that's going to go out. And that's why this is smart. I would put this in the smart category. Let me keep a tally here. Smart category for Newsom. Because it doesn't matter what he says. All he has to do is get a clip out there. You saw all those older clips of Kamala out there going, we should definitely let men into women's prisons, and then we should allow them to, pay for their gender reassignment surgery. And that killed her. I mean, there was a lot of other reasons why her campaign failed, but that was a big one because they ripped it, put it in that ad, and that ad was hugely effective. And Newsom knows this, or his team knows it. So all he has to do is get a clip where he sounds somewhat reasonable, and they can use that for opposition or attack ads or whatever. So that part was really smart. But then it was interesting. He says this is where his automation kicks in. You guys weaponized it. You'll hear Gavin throughout this whole interview use a lot. I call them automation words. They're just the words that are programmed into him, his robot self, as a liberal, as a liberal Democrat. And weaponizing, that is one. Weaponizing the issue of fairness. Weaponizing the issue of boys beating girls in girls sports, violating Title IX. He talked about there's this long jumper in the Central Valley, I think, here in California. And I haven't checked up, but he's a high school student. He's competing against high school girls. He's going to win the long jump. He's going to win the state championships, obviously. So Newsom obfuscated, and you'll notice when he can't answer a question or when he doesn't want to answer a question, I'll say that, his language gets garbled. I mean, quite literally, you'll start, he'll say, Biden used to do that too. That's a body language thing. As you guys know, I'm a body language expert now because of YouTube. And, but that is, you notice that with guilty criminals when they're getting interviewed, sometimes they're called fading facts, where you just can't talk about this anymore. It's not true. It's going to get you into trouble. And so you just start fading, whatever. You do it like that, right? The things start fading. So you'll see Newsom doing that. And then the other thing I'm just noticing is all these hand gestures. All of that is a sign of dishonesty. All of these hand gestures, if you watch with the sound off, which you guys know I like to do, all of the hand gestures look like, I need you to believe me, right? If I do this, are you believing me? You know, do you see all of them are requests for approval? Are you believing what I'm selling you? Now, for me, I talk with my hands, but also that's just a personality trait. Some people have those, but there is an aspect of I'm telling you something that I really want you to believe, my opinion, because my opinion is right. So, but Gavin is pathological with his stuff, and it all works together, right? It's all part of his personality. You pair that with the lies he tells, obfuscating, redirecting, and it's just a big recipe for dishonesty. And I think Charlie knew going in that if he pressed Gavin, that he could unveil some of this dishonesty, and he did. The unfortunate result of that was that he gave Gavin those clips. Right? Those are clips he's definitely going to use running in 2028. This is an 80-20 issue. By the time we get to 28, a lot more of the base is probably going to have figured it out. Now, as we move forward, I want you to pay attention to Gavin. I want you to pay attention to how he is forming responses with clips in mind. And I'll get to this later, because this isn't the only episode. I could not watch the full versions of the other ones, but I did watch Bannon and Savage, and he's doing something different in those. So he's learning. It's learning, everyone. The organism is adapting. So I do think we need to pay attention to what Gavin is paying attention to, for sure. All right, let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll go to the next clip. Okay, we're back. Let's go to the next clip from Gavin. And this one is, let's see. I have in my notes, it's gobbledygook. I don't know what that means, because I really can't remember. But let's have some fun here. Let's see what the gobbledygook is. Let's see.
Watch this. You signed a law where school districts can't even tell parents if their kids are trans.
Not true.
Okay,
Factually
then,
untrue.
okay, then.
No, they can. They just can't get fired for not doing that. And it wasn't just trans.
Fired for not.
The law was explicit, said you can't be fired for not snitching on a kid, not just for being trans, for being gay. And my point is, how in the hell
But
are you
the
telling
parents know?
They have every.
Wait, is
by
telling
the way,
parents snitching?
No, the teachers themselves have the right. The law is, they can do that. They can do that. We're not saying you can't do that. We're saying you shouldn't be fired if you choose not to say Johnny was talking about, liking some other boy. That's a
charitable reading. The other
it's
way
not charitable. It's actually
let me
the
tell
freedom not to.
Let me tell you
snitch.
the other way to say this: that a teacher, of course, should be fired if you don't notify a parent of what's happening to their kid.
But
of course, they should be terminated for that.
If on health and safety, shouldn't they be teaching? I want these kids to teach. I want these teachers to teach. And by the way, if they feel like the health or safety of the kid, they have a responsibility to communicate. They still can. By the way, we're not telling these teachers they can't. We're saying they won't be fired if they don't look around and say in the recess, there were two boys. Why didn't you see that? You're fired. You should have said something, because they're talking about
two different things. But there, of course, should be a penalty.
All right. Yes, Charlie is right. Of course, they're two different things. We can stop sharing this. Of course, Charlie's right. Of course, they're two different things. Okay, did you understand what he said? If he was trying to explain that position to you, would you go, "Oh, that makes sense," or would you go, "I need more"? Basically, what he's saying is, it's that this law protects teachers. If teachers want to protect that information, the law protects teachers. It is, as Charlie put it, a charitable reading of the bill, but that's not what it is. I'm living it right now. And obviously it does give permission for teachers to keep secrets, as Charlie said. Okay, but full stop. Why should a teacher be keeping these secrets from a parent? And that's the whole issue, right? And I'm sure I did watch Charlie's commentary, and I think he wished he had a little bit of a do-over there, so he had pressed a little further in on the parents issue, the parents' rights issue. You're going against parents. But you see, okay, I'm just protecting teachers. I want teachers to be able to teach. But that's not true either, because we kept them out of school at their request. You fill the classrooms with CRT and DEI. We now have a mandated ethnic studies program that we have to do. So even if you have a conservative board, you have to you can only choose from this list of communist books. It's absolutely insane. Our conservative school board is dealing with that issue now. They only have so many curriculum items to choose from. They have to take the ethnic studies course. It's insidious. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's talking about. But that's fine. I even think that's fine. If he wants to take that confused position on the issue, we're just telling teachers they're not going to get fired if they don't. It's the same difference. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. He's still on the 20% side of the 80% issue. Because that's a loser everywhere you go. There's no parent that you're going to find who thinks it's okay for a teacher to hide things. Not just that a teacher shouldn't be fired if they hide things, but that they should hide them at all. This is Newsom saying, again, the government knows best. So it's such gobbledygook. It's such gobbledygook. And that's really where people will, I'm already would love to see a Vance Newsom debate. This is a little bit of prep work for that. We'll talk about that, because I got a list of pros and cons. I'm going to go down. Okay, let's go to I've got one more clip. Let's go to one more clip here. Let's see if I can remember what clip this is. Oh, okay. All right, good on Charlie. Another reason why I'm going to give Charlie A+ for this interview. I was skeptical at first, but I'm glad he did it. He did not let up on that French Laundry thing, and I think he got Gavin to kind of apologize for it here, which is a moment that's not really going viral, but interesting. Well, let's play.
It's a Chardonnay. Listen to Rachel Maddow self-medicating and just going, yes,
At
yes,
the French
yes.
Laundry, of
yeah,
course.
the French. That's of course the only place I eat, and
Can you get me a
the
table?
great
I'm struggling.
takeout and the whole thing. Well, I should have been at Applebee's. I get it. Applebee's America. I read the
Come
books.
on, man.
Come on.
In-N-Out Burger. Be
Jesus
with the
Christ.
people.
And here's a guy who makes 25 times more money than I do. And he's sitting here with a jacket, and I'm sitting here with a
That's right. And you control the 5th largest economy on the planet.
We don't control, the people control the 5th largest economy. And by the way, proud that you know it's a
I know, with
$3.89 trillion
a declining
economy.
population. But
No,
hey,
the population went up last year.
It.
Population went up last year.
Yeah, because of the illegal border. We'll talk about that later. I got a whole thing on that.
That's just factually untrue. And that
290,000 net.
By the way,
anyway, we'll
394 National Guard that I put down at the border 6 years ago. You should be championing that as governor of California. 394 we have down at the border. We've been focused on fentanyl. I've been working on this.
But anyway, you're getting somewhere complimentary.
I was going back to.
You're talking about your whining and dining at French Laundry.
Yes, I was talking about the importance of never. I can't help you with a reservation.
I get such a kick out of this whole shtick. I got to be honest.
So Jesus, very nice. By the way, we couldn't have this conversation with that conversation. Dumbest bonehead move of my life. Okay, own it, move on, grow up. And I'm trying to
Is that you talking to yourself?
That's me
Okay,
talking to
okay,
myself. I'm just looking, I'm looking right at you in the eyes as I say that, just to get your reaction. That said,
Okay, he did it. It got ruined by that ad. Sorry. No, he did. He apologized there. I'm going to clip that up. Dumbest bonehead move of my life to go to the French Laundry. You heard it there. Gavin Newsom. Dumbest bonehead move. He said, and then earlier he said, well, I should have gone to Applebee's, I guess. No, sir. The point is you shouldn't have gone anywhere because you were locking all of us away. You even sent the sheriff out to arrest a man surfing alone in the ocean during COVID while you were at the French Laundry, no masks, enjoying socializing, at the same time telling parents that they were domestic terrorists for wanting their kids back in school, at the same time shutting down businesses who had the audacity to stay open so they could support their families. This guy, it was a bonehead move. It was a lot more than a bonehead move, sir. That was not a bonehead move. That was criminal, what you did. You should never escape that. And you should not be allowed to get away with just dismissing it during a Charlie Kirk, just sandwiching that little apology in there during a Charlie Kirk interview. Shame on you. You'll never outlive the French Laundry. You will never outlive that moment. That will go with you right next to a picture of LA burning to the ground. When you run for office in 28, that image is going to be there. That image is going to be there. We're going to make sure everyone knows that your authentic self went to a $10,000 a plate restaurant during COVID while you were locking the rest of us away and arresting people for being out in public, for running their businesses, for trying to live their lives. What a scumbag. What an absolute scumbag. It's not going to fly. I know people are nervous about this. It's not going to fly. Good on Charlie for getting that out of him. I don't know why Charlie hasn't clipped that because that's pretty amazing. I don't think I've ever seen him address the French Laundry issue. All right. Let's go to a break. Let's go to a break right here. And when we come back, I'm going to run down my pros and cons. Do I think that this was a smart move on Gavin's part? Do Republicans have anything to be worried about, or is this a bomb? We'll be right back. All right, we're back. We're breaking down This Is Gavin, the podcast, his first episode with Charlie Kirk. All right, I made a list, so let's go down this list. Some pros and cons here. All right, here's what I think are some of the good ideas of this for Gavin for this podcast. I think he's moderating. This is a great way to moderate. You get those clips like the one on the trans issue. He needs to tell people that he is not part of the loony left, even though he's from the most leftist state in the union. Well, it remains to be seen if he can moderate on that. But it's a good aid for moderating. All right. I think it's a brilliant move to bring the podcast sphere to him. He cannot go on a big podcast during the fires. This is all Newsom trying to be Trump. He's trying to emulate the Trump style. Now, I don't think it will work because Trump is authentic and Gavin can't be authentic. He can't be. That's too dangerous for him. He's a terrible person. He would lose everything. He'd lose his whole family if he was authentic. He can't imitate authenticity. Seems impossible. That's contradiction. But he is trying to imitate Trump. Well, they saw a podcast and they were like, Trump went on podcast. We need to send Gavin on podcast. So what do during the fires? Instead of him governing, he flies in the Pod Save America guys. That's ostensibly the largest liberal podcast in the political sphere. At one time, Pod Save America owned political podcasting. They were the most influential podcast for the left and a majority of the right. But we caught up and excelled very quickly. So in his mind, that was the best thing he could do. Well, that's a podcast that gets 100,000 views. That podcast that he did got, I think, 127,000 views all told. Charlie Kirk, it's a bad day for him. 1 million is a bad day for him. Dan Bongino, same way. Like all of the big conservative podcasters, you're looking at millions. Joe Rogan, 3 million views on any given podcast. he can't go on Joe Rogan. He can't go, maybe someday in the future, but he's definitely not ready yet. He can't insert himself into a podcast like Charlie Kirk. Charlie might have him on, but he knows he's going to get blasted. Charlie's whole crew is going to be there. He will get blasted, but also from his base. His base will be angry about him making the effort to go to. But I think it's a little more palatable if he brings the conversation to himself. So he brings the big influencers to himself. He gets their clicks, their views, their audience. And he doesn't have to figure out how to make his podcast a huge hit. I think it's brilliant. I think it's a brilliant move. And yeah, I know you don't want to hear it, conservatives or Republicans, but it's a brilliant move. You can't compete in the podcast sphere as a guest. So you bring those people to you. Now there's a question. Should these people be going on? Should conservatives give Gavin Newsom the air, give him what he wants by giving him their platform? I have thought about this quite a bit. Charlie, I thought, went on there because he wanted to challenge Newsom. I watched Bannon and Savage, and I don't think they had the same purpose. Savage especially, I wasn't pleased with, but Savage is more, I can't believe I'm going to say moderate, because he used to be one of the hardcore right wingers, but Savage he's an East Coast Republican. I'll say that. But yeah, Savage didn't go in there guns a-blazing. He was, he really was making nice with Gavin, I thought. And I didn't like that. That being said, I think it aids Gavin and what he's trying to do. That being said, here's what I thought about as those complaints were coming to my mind. I thought, that's what the liberals were complaining about with Trump, is we need to be very careful about how angry we get about this and how much air we give that anger. We need to be very careful, because when Trump won in 2016, one of the reasons why the media went absolutely bat poop crazy after that and still hasn't returned to any type of normalcy is because they blamed themselves for that election. They believed that they platformed Trump so much while they were making fun of him that they actually gave him air, that they actually got his message out to Americans in a way that they wouldn't have been able to see. They thought they aided in making Americans like Trump. And so they said, well, never again, we're not going to platform him. We're going to give everything he says context. Famously, New York Times said they wouldn't cover his remarks live. They blamed themselves. They wanted to make sure that never happened again. We need, as conservative media, to make sure we don't become that, right? That we're so obsessed with squashing the voices of the left that we end up giving them more air through that obsession, that we end up becoming like the left. So I think it's tempting to blame Savage and Bannon and Kirk for going on there and giving this guy air that we really don't need him to have. But on the other hand, do we want to be like the left? If they want to go on there and Gavin has a podcast, and who are we to say that shouldn't happen? We have to win in the arena of ideas, hence the title of my book. Drawing lines, why conservatives must begin to battle fiercely in the arena of ideas. We have to win in the arena of ideas. We have to win in the arena of persuasion, if and when it comes to that. So when Gavin gets out of California and onto the national scene, then we need to be prepared to persuade America that he is not the pick for them. I don't think we win by just squashing the voices of the other side. Squash the policies, squash the politicians, but squash or censoring or restricting or limiting those voices because we're afraid people will like them, I think that's a dangerous game. And so, as annoying as it might be, I caution everyone to pull back from that line of thinking. All of these voices must be heard. And so, yeah. Bannon played a few games that I saw. At one point, he told Gavin, well, he offhandedly said, I think Democrats need to be listening better to more leaders of their party. Leaders like you're definitely a leader of the party. I felt like that was definitely some ass kissing, trying to make because Gavin does respond to that, make him feel like, yeah, I am the upcoming leader. I think Bannon thinks that's good because he thinks Gavin is beatable. I am nervous because Gavin has won re-election 3 times in this state, even though it's the worst state in the union. So don't underestimate the power of his persuasive nature. I don't understand it, but maybe I think for a living, so maybe I'm just too thoughtful about it. There are those of us here in California. I mean, my friend Jennifer Van Laar's been keeping a whole file on Gavin Newsom, waiting for this 2028 run. So we're prepared, and we're boning up. We're beefing up our files and our opposition research. But when he goes out there, we'll have all the goods. But in the meantime, I just don't think we can act like, well, we have to just squash his voice altogether. We have to be really careful that we're not becoming the left. The other interesting part of the Bannon and Savage interviews was he did those remotely. Charlie came into the studio for that interview. Savage and Bannon were remotely. And I think that works hugely in Gavin's favor, because when they're challenging him, we don't have to see him. We're only, and the camera was on. It was basically a Bannon podcast. It was basically a Michael Savage was in studio as well. Bannon. It was basically a Bannon podcast. It was edited with, he was in frame the whole time, almost the whole time. Gavin only came in a frame when he was speaking or offering a question. So you don't see his awkward gestures. You don't see his awkward responses. All of his hemming and hawing, all of that's whenever he's challenged or uncomfortable, all of that's edited out. It really is there must have been a lot of it. There must have been a lot of stupid Gavin moments, because it's basically a Steve Bannon podcast. I do think that's dangerous. And I think if conservative influencers want to participate in this game, then they should insist on being in studio with Gavin, and they should insist on a full unedited version of the podcast being given to them. Otherwise, yeah, you are just becoming his PR machine. Yeah. All right. Some of the other positives. He gets to explain himself, so he can explain further. Again, this is what he can do to distance himself. You see it a lot. He'll do it on the campaign trail because it's going to be his only defense. But, this is, the legislature did this. I just signed the stuff, and this was really about teachers, not about fairness in sports. And I just want everyone to know that's how I was looking at it. I'm protecting teachers. And he can explain himself. You can decide whether or not he's doing that well. I'll leave that up to you. But at least it's an opportunity for him to explain himself in long form. He's campaigning. This is a great campaign ad. Podcasting is great for campaigning. That is the way of the future. He's definitely learned, and we all have, from what Trump did. I think it's a bastardized version of what Trump did, of course, because what Trump did was authentic, and what Gavin's doing is produced. But he is in the land of Hollywood. So if you're going to get away with it anywhere, it's here. And he gets to bone up on his debate skills. This is the greatest weakness of Gavin Newsom and every Democrat. They cannot defend their ideas because their ideas are stupid. You heard Charlie say in one of those viral clips, Gavin's asking him for advice. He's like, get better ideas. This is the left's biggest Achilles heel, and I hope they don't fix it anytime soon. They have no good ideas. They don't know how to get good ideas. They don't know how to think properly, and they can't explain their ideas because their ideas are unexplainable. They're inexplicable. They are stupid. So Gavin is if he's going to run for president, he is most likely running against JD Vance. Unless something happens to JD Vance, he's running against JD Vance. If something happens to JD Vance, he's probably running against Marco Rubio or someone else from the administration. Someone who's been doing something for 4 years. He's going, and you've seen JD in action. Let's just assume it's JD Vance right now. You've seen him in action. I mean, Tim Walz, who is not as stupid as Kamala, close, but not as stupid, couldn't hold a candle to JD. Gavin will also melt. So this is the opportunity for him. He can't change his ideas. he can't do that. So that he's at an eternal disadvantage there. He cannot change his ideas. He can't learn. But what he can do is learn what conservatives think. This is one of the other big weaknesses that Democrats and liberals have when they're debating us, is that they have a caricature in their mind of what we believe and who we are. And they're always arguing to that caricature. And of course, the caricature has no basis, no foundation. It's not real. And none of those ideas are actual ideas that we support or think. So it's really easy to combat if you have a long form podcast to do that, or a debate, say. And so he knows that. So he gets to bone up and he gets to discover what conservatives are thinking and how we're expressing those ideas, so he can at least respond directly to those ideas. Again, he cannot change his ideas, but he can learn how to speak to conservatives to nullify their ideas. I believe that's his hope. So this is a great way for him to get practice for these inevitable campaign debates that he'll have, even against his own party. He'll have to get through the primary process first. That'll be interesting in and of itself. Because as you saw, Kamala's problem was that she couldn't even make it to Iowa in 2020 because she's not used to being challenged. Once she was challenged, she folded. So this is his team hedging against that. I think it's brilliant. I think it's a really smart move. All right, let's get to I know you're nervous. You're going, okay, Kira, do I have anything to feel positive about as a conservative with this? All right, let's go to the negatives. All right. There's too many questions. When you're in a long form podcast, it's too much room for questions. You saw Charlie. Charlie was nonstop. He didn't let up on the French Laundry thing. Every time Gavin mentioned school, he mentioned how Gavin closed down schools. He ragged on Gavin a lot, and Gavin couldn't combat that. He had his fading facts things. Well, remember, it's sort of the thing. It's whatever. He had that thing. He had his hand gestures going. He was in full defensive Gavin mode. Doesn't quite work the same when you're interviewing remotely. Bannon didn't have those same opportunities because the podcast team could edit it all out, and we didn't have to look at Gavin struggling through the whole thing. We were basically watching a Steve Bannon podcast. So, it only works if you don't have the power of that editing tool with you. So there's too many questions that can come up. Also, here is the other thing about podcasting. This is why in the past, media people and podcasters have not made good candidates. That's changing because the landscape is changing, but they have not made good candidates because we talk all the time. And when you talk all the time for a living, that's hundreds and hundreds and thousands of hours of you saying things. And you've said something awkward at one point. You've expressed a bad idea at one point. You've changed your mind at one point. So the opposition has all of that to draw on. So the more right now, Gavin doesn't talk. He doesn't really get interviewed. He talks in clips in front of the news cameras, and he has his stupid podcast with Marshawn Lynch. He doesn't really talk. He doesn't have to. So now he has to talk on this podcast. These are more minutes for him to be saying things. And the more you talk, the more vulnerable you become. So it's a fine line to walk. And I'm not sure that Gavin has the ability to do that. All right. He's not working. He's podcasting. So when he runs for 28, and I look back on this podcast, hopefully be finished up by then. Excuse me. I would say, okay, well, he still had a year and some change left in his term here in California, and he did not work. He was podcasting. LA is still on. None of those fires are 100% contained, by the way, even to this day, although that could go on for months. Just little spot fires here and there, that kind of thing. But LA, that recovery is going to be years. They've reneged on every promise they made Trump to speed up that recovery. So when we look back and all of this stuff still going on, again, I implore you to remember, as crazy as this sounds, those fires were a little over 2 months ago, not that long ago. So we're still in the planning phase of recovery, and Newsom's podcasting. He's not working. He's podcasting. We'll remind people about that. I'm not sure that now this could change as he gets more guests, but I'm not sure he has enough views. Again, I went to Charlie's podcast, 1 million views. I went to Newsom's podcast, 100,000 views. Are liberal and progressive Newsom supporters going to find Newsom content on other podcasts? If they're not, and if they're just looking at Newsom's podcast, well, then that's good news, because there's clearly not enough of them. There's not a lot of them. So it's not a lot of people getting that message. But if they're moving to Charlie's podcast or to Bannon's podcast, or whoever reposts it, and I suggest you all do that if you're on his show, if they're moving there, again, that's not a view that Gavin is getting. And yes, Gavin is speaking to conservatives that wouldn't otherwise hear him, but also so is Charlie Kirk. Also so is Steve Bannon. Also so is Michael Savage, right? And they're hearing ideas. If liberal people are going over to Charlie's podcast, when he replays this, they're hearing ideas that they've never heard before. That's very influential. That's what Trump and JD Vance did, right? They circumvented the mainstream media that was telling everyone these people are so weird. And then when we actually saw who they were, people said, oh, well, they're not as weird as they looked on TikTok, or they're not as weird as CNN was making them out to be. So I think it can only bode ill for Gavin to send his listeners over to conservative podcasters like Charlie Kirk, because they're going to like what they hear. Now, I went and looked at the comments on these videos, both on Charlie's and Gavin's, and on both pages, people were, there was a lot of comments of, well, I'm glad they're having this conversation. It should be it should be both sides talking to each other. So you can't tell with the comment section. Newsom's people pay people to comment on stuff. So I don't even know how to gauge that. I'm just telling you that's what's on there. So the viewership might be an issue. And then he's betraying his base. That's the other thing that he's contending with. That's why it behooves him to have those little clips so he can send those out for the moderates. And then when he needs to reassure his base, he can go back into that podcast and say, no, this is where I said, no, my parents don't have to know everything in the classroom. I just want teachers to teach. So he's betraying his base by moving to the middle. Our contention as conservatives is that their base they miscalculated their base. It's not big enough to win. And so if he leaves the base behind, will that be a problem? Will that be a problem for their chances, for his chances in 28? I don't know. So the final question is, no, wait, there was something I was going to go back to. America doesn't know him. Oh, that's another positive in his positive category. America doesn't really know him. So podcasting is a way for America to get to know him. And there's a lot of Americans out there who will like him. They'll like what they see. Again, after coming through 4 years of absolute fakeness, I think Americans have a finely tuned nose for inauthenticity right now. That could change moving into 28. But right now, I don't think Americans are buying it. And I don't think Americans are going to buy what Gavin is selling right now. All that to say, I do think Republicans should be keeping an eye on this. Is it time to get nervous? No. But I think maybe as they move forward with strategizing, yeah, they should be a little bit concerned that Gavin has figured out a way to circumvent the conservative media complex and to use them. And again, I don't want to tell anybody what to do, who to go on, who to talk to. The more voices, the better. But, you aren't helping us here in California if you give Gavin your platform. That's not a help. And if Charlie wants to win elections, which he says in the podcast, Gavin did ask him about running for office. Charlie said, no, I think I'm a better use in the space that I am. I agree. Winning elections and motivating movements. Well, if Charlie's in the business of winning elections, then it's not going to help us win elections in California to lend your considerable influence to Gavin's platform. That being said, I don't know what the right answer is. This is the right answer for him to say no. No, and after watching it again, I will say I'm glad he went on there. I think Charlie did the right thing. What I saw of Bannon and Savage, no, I don't think those two were helpful at all. And we'll see with this moving forward as well. Now he's got some great guests lined up. And if the momentum gets going, more conservatives will want to come on the show. But then is a conservative podcast? And then what happens to the base? What happens to liberals when he's trying to go out there? All he's doing is talking to conservatives. Is he thinking that he is going to win the conservative electorate? Or is he just going for that middle, which I don't know what the middle is anymore. I know what the polls say the middle is. I know what some of you might say the middle is. But frankly, we've all been pushed center of the middle for the last 5 years, maybe 10. To the point where we have a name for it. It's called cancel culture. So we have been pushing everybody. There's just, what I'm saying is the middle's been so red-pilled, I'm not sure how much of the middle is left. I've talked to people on the show. Jennifer Say, she runs that great athletics brand. She used to work for Levi's. She came on the show. She got fired because she advocated for kids to be back in school. She got fired for that as a domestic terrorist, I guess. So she launched her own brand, XXXY, which is a brand to support girls for, girls in girl sports. And excuse me. She was a liberal. She's from San Francisco. She lives in San Francisco. She was a liberal, voted for Newsom, and lost her job. She was on track to be the first female president of Levi's, got fired for simply saying, I think kids should be back in school. She got red-pilled because of that. Now she's testifying on behalf of women's sports in Congress. Right now she has this brand that's dedicated to there are only two genders, and we're supporting that scientific fact. Red-pilled. Rogan, red-pilled. Peterson, red-pilled. All of these people, red-pilled, just people coming over in droves and becoming hardcore, not just middle of, they may still say, yeah, I'm middle of the road because they don't want to be MAGA. But no, they're on the right. I'm not sure what the middle is anymore, I guess. Don't need to belabor that point. I don't know where the middle is. I'm not sure how big it is anymore. So I'm not sure if he can go get those people without leaving the left, without becoming a right-winger himself. Now, if Gavin tries to pivot and say, I'm a conservative now, I don't know. I don't think so. I think America, and in my next episode, I'm going to talk about this issue of fakeness that we're having, that the left is having. I just don't think America's going to have this. Not right now. And I don't think we'll be ready by 2028. I don't. So unless Gavin can change his entire personality and moral structure and suddenly become a moral human being who can be authentic about what he believes, I'm not too worried about this podcast, but I do think it was a smart move. I absolutely do. So the question of the podcast today, is Gavin Newsom's new podcast a smart move? The answer is yes. I just think the positives outweigh the negatives. But he's still, there's a lot of landmines in there, a lot of landmines for him. So I'm not calling it a win. It's just a smart move as he moves into 28. It's 2025, everybody. Right? We have 3 years. Let's be careful not to become the left as we criticize these moves, as we make our own moves, as we strategize. Let's make sure we don't become the left. Okay? All right. Well, let me know what you think. Write to me, JLTY at protonmail.com, JLTY at protonmail.com. Follow me on X at Real Kira Davis. Sign up for my Substack, all that good stuff. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment here. Let me know under the comment section here on YouTube, or leave a comment on the other platforms, and subscribe, all of the stuff. Okay. Until we meet again, every once in a while, just stop and listen to yourself.
I pray the Lord my soul to take, that we won't lose faith and we won't lose faith. All we got is us, no one can take that away. So don't lose faith, it's gonna be okay. I pray the Lord my soul to take, that we won't lose faith and we won't lose faith. All we got is us, no one can take that away. So don't